Okay, welcome to AI-powered PR. It's fantastic to have so many of you with us today. I'm John Card, and sitting next to me is...
Foreign Card, nice to see you all.
Welcome. So we're going to get started very soon. Karen's going to start off by talking about what we've discovered over the last 12 months with regards to AI and how it's affected the media industry. And we'll be sharing some of the stuff that we're making clear to our clients, our PR clients. I'll then be following up with how to basically get into more of these large language models, LLMs or ChatGPT, AI, basically, how to make you show up. So if you go to a meeting, for instance, and somebody does a ChatGPT search on you, get some meeting notes about you, what's going to be in there? Well, that's what we're going to be showing you today, and we'll be showing you how to appear more frequently in those AI results too. All right, Karen, I'm going to hand over to you, and you're going to dig into this topic for us. What have we been discovering?
Yes, I'm Karen Card. I'm the co-founder of Full Story Media alongside John. And I have been finding that as a PR company, we are discovering we are even more important than we thought we would be in AI. The reason is that AI is searching for these highly credible, highly authoritative sites, highly relevant. And those are the sites that again and again, we've always been working to get our clients into. Now, why does that matter? Because people are searching more and more for their information from places like ChatGPT. And when they search those, they're finding different results from what you find in Google and from what you find in Google's AI overview. And it's different across the LLMs. So ChatGPT is the most used, but in all of these ones that people are searching in, the place that most of these LLMs are looking for information is from editorial media. So 61% of its results are going to come from news sites, and it could be all kinds of news sites. It's almost always going to be news sites that aren't behind a paywall. The second most is from owned media. So this is a bit of a surprise for everyone, but what you have on your own website and other sites owned by you or contributed to by you, a blog, those are the second most important. So we are also looking at what people are putting on their websites is it going to complement what we're getting out in the press?
LLMs are large language models. These are basically what you call AI. Most people call AI as ChatGPT and Gemini, etc. So these are large language models.
Mark Rack did a piece of research to find out the most important thing for PR companies, what their priorities for the next 5 years. And the most important was AI and automation. Now, these are two different things in a way. You want AI to show your results from your clients, the results that you want it to show, but you also want to be able to automate. You want to get the best possible efficiency from what you're doing. So it's not clear what they wanted to do in this survey specifically, but generally AI was the most important thing. Here's where some companies have gone into a slightly less ethical route, and that is by, well, for example, there's someone called Rebecca Lee. Rebecca Lee is a biochemist and a science educator with a background in molecular biology. And Rebecca Lee never existed. She's one of these people who have been created as a virtual expert, and there are many of them, then sent out to get links for companies to get falsely quoted in all kinds of press. So Wired, Business Insider, national, international. The BBC had to remove articles with fake experts. So here's one way AI is being used in a very nefarious way that we would not recommend. But it's interesting that that's happening, that's possible. Now, on the other side, journalists have to be careful. So this is the front page of a newspaper called Dawn. So in their defense, these are people who I believe have English not as their first language, but have accidentally left on that end of the ChatGPT text. If you want, I can also create an even snappier front page style version. So we all have to be really careful about AI, but also we have to use it as much as we can in a good way. So we've started looking at how our clients are appearing in AI, and all the time it is very relevant what we've had published for them, but also what they've got on their own website. So as you can see here, Josh Huff of Caroline Live, you can see the lovely photo we got of him in the photo
So
shoot
this
we
is a
did.
ChatGPT search that we've done on one of our clients, right?
Who is Josh Huff of Caroline Live? And I wanted it to say, this is who he is, this is what he's like. And I also wanted to know where ChatGPT found that information, and here it gave me the link. So it's, yes, gone straight to Caroline Live's own website, also gone to a site called Tech Informed. So that's a relevant site for a tech company. And here's that Tech Informed article.
So it's websites, and it's also basically the media, sort of available media. That's where they seem to be drawing the profiles from. These are the two big areas. Cool.
Crucially, Tech Informed is well respected, not behind a paywall, but also is written really clearly, because clarity is very important for these LLMs, for ChatGPT. It wants to be able to read it, understand it. It wants the same information to be clearly given across the credible websites. Here's another site with the same story about Josh, effectively written slightly differently, but it again confirms what it wants to find out about him. Now, we also want our clients to appear when we do a more general search, as everyone probably wants to do. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to appear when someone's looking for your product. So I asked ChatGPT here, who provides laptops to prisoners, fairly niche, but yes, fortunately it came up with our client Coracle, and all kinds of information about Coracle, and then those tiny links you can see where it got the information.
So the people on this call today, they could simply do a search on themselves to start with, but also they could get someone else with a different account to do a search on you and find out now what ChatGPT is likely telling everyone else all about you and your clients.
And every search is going to be different. That's the other confusing thing. And also there's far less information about why and how they're just making a decision, other than asking Chat itself, how did you make this decision? This isn't publicly recorded, and that the reason is, unlike Google, they're not really advertising at the moment. So why would they share that?
And all the models are slightly different, aren't they? We're using Chat because that's the most popular one, and we've got used to it. That's the one that we use. But other large language models, or AI, as you would typically call them, are coming up with slightly different results and drawing from slightly different places.
Yeah, it's not always the biggest sites. It's sometimes the most relevant one. So if it's a tech company, tech sites are going to be great. Here we have OMGT. Now, I thought this was interesting, specifically the way that they were written up online. So OMGT is a matcher company, and I asked simply, who makes high quality, which companies make high quality matcher? They definitely want to appear for this. Now, I wondered why they got in that list of high quality matcher, and it was to do with an article here in Olive magazine. It said, I checked through different articles for ratings, review lists, and this was really important for them, that they got in a list by Olive. So Olive is relevant because it's all to do with food and drink. And here they were listed amongst other relevant companies. So it had this really easily readable list.
So what you got here is that then you've got a media title doing one of their big lists. Here's the 10 things you need to know. Chat seems to love those types of lists, basically, doesn't it? That's what we find.
And there's one company who, I think it's a law firm, they listed their competitors, some of them, saying, if we're not right for you, you could try these other companies. And it listed just the competitors, but they didn't realize why only their competitors were coming up in relevant searches on AI. Turned out it was drawing straight from their own website. They then added themselves to the top of that list, presumably changing the intro slightly, and started appearing top of the list on AI.
It almost seems like there's almost an argument to list some of your competitors on your own website, but with your name at the top. Whether that is a tactic, I'm not sure exactly want to recommend that. It may be that be seen as a black hat tactic in years to go by, but what we do know is that ChatGPT and some of these other large language models, they are searching around for lists of information. And so because people are asking for lists, right? They want to know, who's the top 10 of this.
So they're doing them a huge favor. Any of the publications or people who own their own website who list the options, then they can take it straight from there. Now, one of our companies, we got Elena here from Green Doors, and the Green Doors upcycles doors and then sells them online. So again, I searched on ChatGPT, which company upcycles doors, up come Green Doors, and I wanted to know what they were looking at. Now, this one thing that worked well with Green Doors and AI was industry sites. So not the biggest sites, they were on lots of different sites. They were on tabloids, they were on national newspapers online, but often it was these smaller but very relevant sites. And this is true, I think the majority of what people will find is that it's very specific industry sites that are most trusted.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the standout things for me that we found, wasn't it? I think that we saw that some of the B2B coverage,
yeah,
and the trade and industry titles were highly rated by some of the AI search.
Door Industry Journal, maybe not something everyone here reads, but it is very readable by ChatGPT.
Super narrow focus, isn't it? Obviously, it's the door industry. So
the
that
door
title
industry,
you can get as a focus.
They know about Green Doors, which is great.
Whereas obviously the bigger news sites, BBC and the Sun, the Mirror, all those types, they're really broad. So, but you've got these which are kind of super relevant.
And yes, with a slightly different search, looking about the founder, Joseph Holman, also came up with Door Industry Journal. So never ignore these very narrowly focused industry titles that you can find online. And then Business Weekly, so business titles too, fine, that also appeared. I want to then just go through 3 things that I think are really important. Ensure that multiple sites confirm your story, the story you want to tell. From what we understand, the large language models want it to be absolutely clear what this entity is about. They're showing entities rather than websites, which you would see on Google. So it wants to know, okay, many different places said this was true. You want authoritative sites, but you really want relevant sites. So you want to go for both. That's always been true, but even more so now, it's slightly prioritizing the relevant sites over the most authoritative. And clarity, loves those lists, but loves anything that's readable. So paywalls present a problem unless they've actually got licensed information from those sites. It won't be able to read it. You also want humans to be able to read it, as always, but you want to be thinking about both.
Thank you. Good stuff. Yep. It's making some big waves in the media industry, definitely. As you say, the relevance is a massive, massive thing. Getting your story out there to multiple places is now seen as an important thing. So the large language models, or the AI chat, I'm going to call them, can confirm your story from multiple places. But obviously, because we're in that game, we're actually quite excited by some of this stuff because it validates the work that we've been doing with our clients. It's a happy days. Oh, Sharon just asked, what is a paywall, please? That's basically where you have to pay to access what's on the website.
Like with the Times.
The Times or the Financial Times, yeah, which is an important thing. Okay. So I'm going to have a quick talk to you now just about how to get some of that press coverage. We're then going to go into a Q&A. So we've already got a few questions coming in. That's just great. If you've got any questions, throw them onto the chat here, and we'll cover those. But now I'm just going to cover over some content which I know some of you have heard before, but basically how to get some press and publicity for your business. I'm going to run through 5 of the most important things I think that every entrepreneur, business owner should know about press and publicity. I think a lot of you know who I am. I'm John Card. I'm a former journalist. I've written for The Guardian, The Times, and The Telegraph, amongst other places. Also, I've got a book, How to Make Your Company Famous. And the first message I've got for you today about the media is very simply this. Journalists are storytellers, okay? So away from the rapidly high-tech world of AI, media actually is something really quite ancient, really quite old, and that is storytelling. Journalists are there to tell stories about what's happening in the world. And I think that this is, this is actually my favorite way of describing the work that journalists do. No matter what type of area a journalist covers, be it business or politics or sport or a specific industry, They are typically looking for stories within that industry to tell their readers about, whether they write an article, whether they do it on the radio, on television. Journalists are storytellers. And that story begins always with a headline. Okay, so if a journalist can't come up with a headline, they can't very easily tell a story. But if a journalist can come up with a headline, then other idea of what's going on, then they can basically, that's where the story begins. Okay, so journalists need to write headlines. So what is a headline? How do you come up with a headline for your business? Well, as a journalist, what headlines were always my favorite part, and I was quite good at finding them. And one of the things I could always do was basically look for two things which didn't quite fit together. So Green Doors, we've already mentioned, has come up in really well in AI search because we've been working with them. And Joe set up his business. Basically, he found a set of French doors in a skip. He took them home, he cleaned them up, sold them online, and then started doing it again and again, finding secondhand doors, cleaning them up, tighten them up a little bit, and then selling them. And he soon filled up his parents' back garden, he filled up the shed, he filled up everywhere, eventually needed a warehouse to fix. He had so many doors, and he kept on going, reinvesting and reinvesting, and now his business is making £2 million a year. So the two things that don't fit together there is this idea that basically you've got a set of doors in a skip, you're starting in a skip, and then you're moving over to a business that's making £2 million. So that seems quite an incredible, that's what you call a juxtaposition. Here is Josh in Entrepreneur magazine. Josh has got a great backstory. Basically, he grew up quite disabled in a wheelchair, but then he used that basically his feelings about that, his disaffection with the world, he got disadvantage, and he set up his own company. And now he sort of launches forward, setting up that company, and so obviously letting a few more people in. And so he grew up in a wheelchair, but now he's the boss of a highly successful software company, and he's doing incredibly well. So again, you've got that kind of sort of disadvantage to success type story. This is what we call a juxtaposition. All right, two things that don't really fit together is often a great start to a story. It's kind of like rags to riches. It's hero and monster. It is, you know, basically what I say, from the ordinary world through to a better world. That's the sort of stories that we're often looking for. Here's an article I did for the Times a number of years ago. A startup trying to save the world. So obviously you've got a tiny company trying to do something monumental. And actually what you've got there on that picture is a chandelier filled with microalgae. And the microalgae is actually purifying the air in the museum. It's extracting carbon from the atmosphere, turning it into water and biomass. And so it's actually cleansing. And Julian, who runs this company here, Arborea, is basically has created these massive, what look like great big green solar panels, and they're extracting carbon from the atmosphere and turning it into something else, which is fantastic. So you got a tiny little microalgae, and then this huge issue, which is climate change. You've got Casper, sailed around the world with 3 children. So remarkable story, obviously, that we got going on there. If it was just Casper sailing around the world, that wouldn't be quite so remarkable. The fact that he did it with his seasick wife and 3 children obviously really stands out as a story. I always think one of the most remarkable things about this story is that he managed to get all 3 kids to look at the camera at the same time. That's a feat in itself if you ever tried to do that. I have 3 children. I don't think they've ever done that before, have they?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Good stuff. So these are what we call hero journey type stories, and journalists are always looking out for these standout stories with wow factor. But they're also looking for people with expertise, inside information and opinions. So a lot of those titles that we showed you earlier, those industry titles, which are fantastic for AI search, well, they all need experts. They all need people with inside information. The journalists there are looking for people who can tell them what's taking place in their industry. And all journalists are doing that. They're all looking for voices. They're looking for voices from people who can tell them about what's going on in industry. I always talk about, a second, please. Okay. Sorry, computer's just playing up. Right, thank you. So whenever I talk to people about putting together a story, people obviously think about writing, think about the words. But what I like to do is I like to break it up into component parts. The headline we've already covered. Journalists are looking for headlines. The stand first is like a secondary headline. It's that some other key information about the story. The angle or hook, that's kind of like what's happening today. So in just a few days' time, we're going to be in the run-up to Christmas. You can expect there to be quite a lot of Christmas-related stories. Anything else that's happening in the news, obviously the budget, there's been lots of budget-related stories. Next year, it'll be the World Cup. There'll be loads of World Cup-related stories. Whatever is happening in the news is a potential angle or hook. But there's one thing there which the journalists can't find themselves. They really need your help, and that is the quotes. Journalists love people who can provide them with good quotes. Quotes in simple language. Quotes that tell you what's going on. That's what I call active language. What's actually going on. They're looking for people who talk plain English. They're looking for people who've got opinions. They want you people to explain sort of what's going on, and they want quotes. If you're the sort of person that can provide a journalist with quotes, then you're ahead of 80% of the pack by some margin, because so many people really struggle to do that. So yeah, plain English quotes, opinionated, simple language, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in your business. The other thing which will set you out from the crowd is some good quality pictures. Pictures which are relevant to what you do. Pictures that will marry up with those headlines that you're looking to create. We recommend to all of our clients and to all the people that have ever done a media training course with is get a photo shoot. Preferably a professional photo shoot with a photographer with press experience. If you can do that, then that's brilliant. It's a little bit of an investment, maybe £700, £800 for a decent photographer, but get a photo shoot. Bright coloured images. You've already seen this guy. Josh has appeared in a number of the AI searches. He appears in the news. Nice, colourful picture, stands out. It's not just a guy in a blue suit, or a boring corporate headshot. It's got a bit of zap to it. And there you see that picture being used again and again in all the coverage that you do. You need to provide titles, particularly some of these trade titles and the industry titles, with high quality pictures, colorful pictures. That will stand you out from the crowd.
And they also show in AI, the pictures.
And they show in AI, absolutely. Those pictures will show up again. There is the story, which I was trying to say about leadership and disability. Pictures have such an enormous impact on the news. I think journalists sometimes downplay the impact that pictures have, but having worked as a magazine editor and worked in PR for almost a decade, I can tell you now that pictures are super, super important. This lady here, Sarah, her business is going really well. She has reinvented the grand piano, right? Grand pianos, they barely changed in design for over a century. And what she did, she found a way to make them smaller and lighter, and also to stand up vertically. Makes it more easily transportable. So when she was doing her crowdfunder a few years ago, went out there and we put together this shot. She's got a nice bright red dress on that stands out from the black and white of the newspaper. And there she's got this glorious piano. And we even moved the plant over there just to make the composition of the shot a little bit better. So you got this nice picture, and there it is in the Telegraph.
I think it was the next day it went in the Telegraph.
It was in the next day, I think it was. Yep, just a little bit of copy, and you got a nice picture of this remarkable invention that you put together. Here's James, one of our clients. He provides prisoners with laptops, and we did a photo shoot in a prison. Took a bit of organizing a photo shoot in a prison, not too easy to do. You're not allowed to photograph any locks. just in case you ever have to do one. Otherwise, they have to change all of the locks. So that took a few permissions, but we got in there, and that photo, well, it has been used in so many places because it's got wow factor, right? Stands out from the crowd. You got a picture in a prison, not a corporate headshot look. That's the thing. Who wants one of those? It's Chris's business, works in the property, real estate industry, and again, just a nice bit of color. Went down by the Thames, lots of big buildings, used the scenery there to get together a nice photo shoot. Here's Christine. Christine is a business which basically you and I creates websites for businesses, right? So I haven't got any product. I've got nothing really to any great themes to really work with. So we just got a really nice, colorful shot with some good background there. Nice. That was just taken in a WeWork, right? So that's just in a WeWork space. She has got an office at that WeWork, but that's not her office. But we just found a nice place to get a good picture.
A lot of her press was about being a female business owner and women in business, so that worked really well because she's obviously in a business.
Some great opportunities out there for females in business, definitely, 100%. And there's Pete, similar thing, studio space, just nice, bright, colourful photo shoots. You might notice the colour red appearing in a lot of photo shoots, red and orange. That's because newspapers are in black and white. And so we want something that stands out from the crowd. We don't really want people appearing in black and white unless that's really their personal brand. Help journalists to write stories. You know, I know that you probably hear all sorts of ideas about what journalists are like, and you probably hear the Chancellor and the Prime Minister being excoriated on tough interviews. That's not how journalists are going to respond to you. You're business owners. You have rather less to fear from the media than the Prime Minister or the CEO of a stock market listed company or something like that. You're seen much closer to members of the public. Generally speaking, business journalists tend to see business owners as, you know, good people, right? You're making money, you're solving problems, you're creating jobs. That's a positive thing. So they're going to ask you some questions, sure, but what your job, your relationship with them is to help them to write the stories, to provide them with the quotes, to provide them with the pictures. That's how you get good PR. One of the things to do is always to create a nice bio. That's something that I recommend that people do. A simple bio stating your name, your position at the company, the name of your company, what your company does. If you've got some big name clients, that's fantastic. If you've written a book, that's fantastic. If you've got any other positions in society, perhaps you lecture at a university, perhaps you're a member of a large society, something that gives you that bit of credibility, then that is all good and can go into your bio. Christine, her company, she doesn't have any big clients, but she's got lots and lots of clients. So she's also got quite a lot of investment. That's great. She can include that in there. This was, I should probably update this, by the way, this was a couple of years ago. I think I have a business that had even more investment and it probably does even more things. And just to show that we practice what we preach, there's my bio. I don't expect that people have heard of me, but I think that you've all heard of The Guardian, The Times, and The Telegraph. So I'm standing on the backs of on the shoulders of these big giants, and I'm using them to raise my own profile. Journalists are looking for help on a daily basis. If you go on X or if you go onto LinkedIn, you'll probably find requests from journalists for people to speak to. And if you can respond well, Karin should probably do you want to tell them about how we saw this? This was on what was then Twitter.
Friday afternoon, when a lot of people were not watching the journo request hashtag on Twitter, but I was. And this is how I managed to respond within the hour to this tweet, as it was at the time, from Kate O'Malley. And therefore, we just saw Christine, who runs I pitched Christine with that lovely photo, and very quickly, crucially, then when we look at what happened as time went on, wait. If you look at the numbers down there, this must have then had hundreds of people pitching, but probably not quite so quickly, and probably not with those wonderful media assets that we had for Christine. 236 retweets, 830 likes, and yet there she was, number 17.
Yeah, if you get in there with the quotes, with a bit of story, some good pictures, you're going to jump ahead of so many people that respond to these things. You know, some people on there are literally on social media saying, oh, yes, please. But like, that's going to get you coverage. You know, you want to go direct to the journalist, give them what they need, help the journalist to write the story. That's basically how a business owner does PR. They help journalists to write stories. And by doing that, they help them to write about them. Okay, by providing the quotes, the pictures, those other things. And that's how you get coverage. And the final bit of advice we have for you before we go into the Q&A is, well, to quote Woody Allen, 80% of success in life is showing up. And so it is with media. In media, basically, the people that get the most coverage are the people who are available and responsive. People who basically say, yes, I can help you. And so what we try to encourage people to do is, if you get the chance to appear on the media, go on the radio or the TV, or have a chat with the journalist, generally speaking, your answer should be yes. The people that don't reply don't appear. No journalist can interview an empty chair. No radio producer can have what they call dead air, which no one on it. People have to be on there. And the media goes through hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people every single day. And they're not all super sports stars or top flight politicians. They're just people who are frankly are available and responsive to what the journalists are asking. And they give them the voices. They help the journalists to write the stories. They help the journalists to write the stories. They get coverage. And ultimately, they show up in those AI searches as well. All right, folks, thank you very much. That there ends our presentation, but we've got some questions coming in.
Yeah, we have.
Can I just press the stop presenting there? Can I do that? Okay.
We have a question here from Simon, who said, what unique skills can experienced PR professionals leverage when using AI tools? So skills, experience, and the power of AI complement one another.
Yeah, so I mean, look, all the best people in any industry are going to be people with some AI tools. So the best PR people are going to be PRs with use of AI tools. I would say that whatever you do, whatever your job is, you know, think, what actually are your skills? What skills do you have today? You know, if you're in PR, you can probably write, you can communicate, you've got media knowledge, but what skills do you already have? I was having lunch with a guy yesterday who really is an engineer. He works in vans and he kits out vans, and he's just been using AI to build apps. He doesn't know anything about code at all, but he understands structures. He has that sort of mindset that he can see how one thing relates to another. And so he's just using his mind really to create stuff. It's revolutionary what's going on. It's going to change a lot of things. And that obviously counts in media, but it's going to hit all industries. But yeah, it's here, folks.
We have Carly, who's asked, at what stage when starting up should I be thinking about PR, and how do I do it effectively on a limited budget and with limited experience?
Yeah, so well, my first thoughts are obviously, if you're quite early stage, then I always tend to recommend to people is, you know, focus on sales, frankly. Make sure you actually have got some sales before you start reaching out to media. You've actually got some business coming in and, you know, your business is making a little bit of money, then it's never too early to start thinking about stories. It might, and that's really what PR is. It's about storytelling and finding and getting your name out there with your story. So it's never too early to think about that. I wouldn't probably recommend to, depending on the company, there are a lot of sort of smaller entrepreneurs that they focus on PR right from the outset. It depends. If you've got some funding and backing and you need to raise your profile, then, you know, you can start at that stage. Every business is a little bit different. It's never too early to start thinking about stories, but yeah, you've got to decide on your own business priorities. Typically speaking, sales, or at least getting the money in some way, shape or form would be my first priority, however.
There is one opportunity that I would not want to miss and that we didn't miss with fostering media, which is your launch. So the launch date is only ever going to happen once for that company. You don't want to miss it. Local press loves launches in the area. It's relevant for them, and the businesses will be interested in a launch. So will startup sites. Startup.co.uk has an area where they publish launches of companies.
There is some really good startup media out there, and there are some journalists that want to focus on those really early stage companies. So, and they are pretty accessible. So yes, that's definitely the case. So you can get a bit of PR for not really spending any money quite early on. And there are sort of slightly lower cost ways to do it, but storytelling, just to reiterate the point, that's that you can. It's never too early to start with that. Cool. Have we got any more?
We've got another question someone sent in. Rosie asked, how do you handle the ethics of AI in PR?
Yeah, it's a big one. The ethics. I mean, obviously, this question is far from unanswered, and it's an ongoing one. But my general feeling is never ever, particularly if you think about your clients, I would never want to put into AI or a large language model anything which is commercially sensitive, or which is told to me in confidence. I think that would be an ethical no-no for me. Essentially, you've got to ask yourself, if somebody was looking over your shoulder, would you be doing this? Right? It's a tricky thing. I think people are getting very revealing with the AI and what they're putting in. I think there's some concerns on that front, because we don't exactly know what's happening with all the stuff that we're putting into the model, or where it's all going, who's going to have access to it. So in terms of ethics, I think that ask yourself the question, really. I think some of us probably know what is ethical and what is not, but there's some big questions about what should go into AI at this point, which I think have not been answered. But yeah, don't do it. Essentially, if it was revealed, we often ask ourselves, don't we? So if it was, could this be a story in the Daily Mail? And if it could, then don't do it. Or could it be a story elsewhere?
Quality and accuracy are constantly coming up when talking about AI. So quality, because how great is that draft press release that you just asked it to make? So it's going to have some elements that are useful. It's not going to be good enough for the top titles. So it's got that something to get you started, but it's never going to be ready. It's never going to be good enough. You've got to have that hybrid. You've got to have plenty of human input. And I think ethically that's important, because you've got to be doing the job right. And you've got to be giving the journalist something that they can assume correctly is led by a human and not by AI. And then accuracy. So we saw how that newspaper accidentally published something it's just taken straight from the AI by mistake. So it's constantly, the more used you get to using AI for everything, the more likely you are to get a hallucination accidentally included, or a little bit of script that wasn't meant to be there. I mean, a lot of us have experienced that in maybe a less public way, but in PR, we are in the business of being public. I mean, it's one of the two words.
Yeah, never send anything out to the public on your social media, or certainly to any other media, unless you've really read it through and you're certain of its accuracy. Don't trust an AI to fire out a press release or a news story or a company announcement or anything like that. That would be a major, major mistake.
Would you recommend people create a fake expert?
I would say don't create a fake expert. No, be the expert and be a real person. That's it. I think there's going to be more and more craving for authenticity, and the more assurances that someone is real, because some of these fakes are quite convincing. And but yeah, so be ethical, I think, is my advice on that front. Good. Have we got more questions? I think I've got a feeling there's going to be some in the chat. I was seeing some come through as I was talking.
There are helpful people who've already answered some of the questions for one another.
That's
so
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think startups.co.uk, if you're a very small company, Velia, they do quite a lot of stuff. Gosh.
No, you've answered that already. Someone's asked about your book, John.
I do have a book. I will happily put that into the chat for you. You can find it on Amazon. It's called How to Make Your Company Famous. Thank you for asking for that. I want to assure everyone that is a real person that asked that question. It was not my promotional bot. Yeah. Is X still a valid channel for a charity which support unemployed professionals equip themselves to find new employment? Is X a valid channel at all? It might be the question. It's a pretty wild west place. We use it a bit. We haven't yet deleted our accounts. Some people have. It's a funny old place.
People feel strongly about it, and I find it useful still for the journal request hashtag, which I go through every day.
Yeah, we haven't abandoned it because we still find some use for it. People are on there, and so you know, I think often with social media you do sometimes do it while holding your nose. But yeah, up to you. Starts UK we covered. How do I find journal requests in LinkedIn? So it depends. If you're following journalists on LinkedIn, we do, and you know, they don't necessarily do it all the time. I believe some journalists will use the hashtag.
They will, but yeah, it's best to follow your favorites who are most relevant for your business and just follow what they're asking for, because it's just much less used, that hashtag, than it is on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, the hashtags are less used on LinkedIn. Good stuff. I hope we've covered most of the questions. What if your company hasn't reached that hero £2 million business stage?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, so I don't think you have to have a massive turnover to get press coverage. You just need to have a good story. So maybe there's something else in your story, which could be that juxtaposition, those two things. It could just be that, you know, how an unfortunate incident led to a great business idea. So your founder story, you know, you don't have to be in the millions. Even if you're up and running, that might well be enough. But if you're still after media exposure, to say the founder story is one method by which you can get some great press and publicity. But the other way, though, is to be that industry expert and to provide the journalist with a commentary. So there's lots of entry routes into the media, and it's not just for the big businesses. There's lots of businesses out there which are still quite small, but do well in terms of press and publicity.
Oh, somebody wants to join. They've just remembered.
Yeah.
Now that it's happening.
Welcome to the call. You're late. Okay, all right, folks. We're just wrapping up as we let somebody in.
If you have missed some of this,
yeah,
you will get the recording.
That's
afterwards.
right. Yep, we have got this recording. We'll be putting it live for you to catch up with. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. It's been great. I'm just going to pop a couple of things into the chat. I think we're going to stop. I'll stop the recording now for you, but then I will just add a few links into the chat for you. If you've enjoyed today, please do get in touch. That it would be great if you did. We're very happy. Always appreciate an email if you like. To what, I'll just ping in a few different chats. Here is, well, I'm putting both of our LinkedIn profiles. If you'd like to follow us on LinkedIn, we do all sorts of media coverage, ideas. We do all sorts of stuff. We write off about storytelling and media all the time. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, that you find all sorts of advice on there. You're just going to put the whole lot in, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that worked. There we go. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, you can see in there the link if somebody asked about John's book, which has a lot of this kind of information in it. We would love to connect with everybody here on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, and thank you very much for coming. Yeah,
that's great. So I'm going to stop the recording now. If you want to stick around, then that's absolutely fine. We're not going to be leaving just yet. Thank you very much.